Hello and welcome to A Writer's Starting Line. My name is Katie and I have been trying to become an author by writing a bunch of short stories I have been sharing with you. I hope you guys enjoy these just as much as I have enjoyed writing them. And this week we are looking at the Queen Catherine's election. I did originally write this and post it back on December 24th of 2025 over on my blog that I also have. If you would like to check that out, I will have the link for that in the description. This writing prompt this week was a finish the story prompt called "When I Stepped Outside, the World Smelled Like," and I ended up with the word saltwater. Now, when I actually went to go write this, it didn't flow quite the way I was expecting it to. It is a story I do eventually want to come back to and finish, I guess is the right word for it, or maybe just completely rewrite it. I'm not 100% sure yet. Emmette, who is the main character in this story, hasn't quite told me what's going on yet. So this is on the back burner of what I would like to look at again for a future story. But as for now, this is what I came up with, and I hope you guys enjoy it. You would think that once a major event has passed, everyone would be told the facts as to what happened. But the realization that different groups can have different histories based on their perspective proves that even facts are not always reliable. What makes it worse is when information is not forthcoming, humans can't help but fill in the gaps. Before you know it, history is written by storytellers who were never there to begin with. The history books that were provided to the children of the HMAS, Queen Catherine, talked of a time in the year the polar ice caps all melted all at once in the span of a few months. It's said that it was the ozone layer breaking down after years of neglect by humans. This information was recorded from spotty news coverage the ship received back then. The Queen Catherine was nothing more than a cruise ship back then. People were able to take luxury vacations at sea and visit ports along the way of a set route. When the water began to rise, ports were flooding rapidly. Before anyone was able to react, the entire surface of the planet had changed. Governments around the world were in shambles. Millions of people were dead, and so many were displaced with nowhere to go. With so much chaos, there were those that took advantage of the situation, and wars, both civil and international, broke out everywhere. That's when cruise ship captains around the world started declaring themselves floating countries. Captain Donald Carns and First Mate Kenneth Sweeting were no different. It was a struggle, and it had caused some unrest aboard for a while. But eventually, the inhabitants of the Queen Catherine came together to determine the laws, necessary punishments, currency, identification, living accommodations, work arrangements, and even taxes. Those who wished to disembark and try to make their way back to their previous homes were allowed to, but with no assistance from the ship. The cruise line companies no longer existed either, so many people stayed and made new lives for themselves on the sea. 200 years later, historians around the globe still debate the cause of the ice cap melting and the cause of the subsequent wars. The land countries' borders look nothing like they did before. There are about 100 floating countries throughout the world, some of which stay in an area between land masses, some of which travel the entire world. There are no regulations on where a ship can travel if they are a country of their own. There are still cargo ships for trade between land masses. Each floating country is small in population size compared to land masses, but it does mean that the government tends to be able to listen and cater to their people better. Emmette Carns was born and raised on the ship. His father worked in the greenhouses, tending to the fruits and vegetables that grow on the ship, and his mother worked in the government office, mostly in the citizenship department. He had an older sister, Jessica, who had married Ryan, a nice guy who focused on the cleaning and maintenance of the ship. Emmett was still young at 20, but extremely smart and charming. Throughout school, he tried to learn all he could about the history of the world, the ship, and the different governments. He would volunteer and be intern in all different jobs that were offered, from garbage services to high-ranking government official. He even got to shadow the captain for a month. Everyone assumed that Emmett just didn't know what he wanted to do, but Emmett just loved knowing how it all functioned. When the current captain, James Whitmer, announced his retirement, an election was arranged to replace him. The first step was nominations. Emmett was surprised to hear his name announced along with the first mate, Lyle Jenkins, and the head of law enforcement, Thomas Long. Emmett had just finished school a year prior and had started a month later working in the kitchen for a few food distribution. Emmett had been happy with his position, but knew he had been described as a born leader. So once the shock wore off, he realized that people believed he could do it. Both Lyle and Thomas started their campaigns right away. Lyle stood on a platform of ship maintenance, needing a bigger priority, wanting to train the younger generation early on what it takes to keep the ship afloat, saying if we don't teach them how, they could run into real problems in the future, especially since there is no saying if there will be land available for them to claim when the ship is no longer able to stay afloat. Thomas was looking more at the short term. His platform centers around stricter checks when docked. The last time they were docked, making trade, a group of young criminals managed to gain access to the ship without proper documentation. The criminals had vandalized many areas of the ship, stolen property, and eventually caused the death of a family of 4 before getting caught. The citizens of the Queen Catherine lived in fear of these criminals until they had been apprehended. Emmett, on the other hand, didn't know what platform he should stand on. Both his opponent's ideas were good, but he wasn't sure if that's what he wanted to make promises about. Besides, from his time learning at the jobs, the current maintenance crew had an amazing internship that taught both short-term and long-term problems and solutions. And once it was discovered how the criminals got aboard, more staff were hired, trained, and positioned more strategically along the ship, as well as new scanners to be able to determine real and fake documents. So Emmett didn't know why these platforms needed to be addressed. Emmett decided he would do what he does best and learn what people wanted. He started going out and talking to people about what they would like to see addressed by a new captain. What he learned was that people didn't feel heard. There were many issues covering all aspects of the ship and the day-to-day life of the citizens. But bringing their issues to the attention of anyone in government, let alone the captain, was nearly impossible. One family of 3 wanted to report a safety concern of their balcony that would also affect their neighbors. They got shuffled between departments before someone finally had them fill out paperwork to be submitted. Then, for 6 months, no one acknowledged the concern. The dad made a temporary fix to protect themselves and the neighbors, but they had no way of following up to see if anyone had looked at the paperwork. Eventually, one of the neighbor children got hurt. Not severely, but enough that the issue had to be addressed before something worse happened. Emmett remembered that incident. He had been doing a stretch in the office of cabin maintenance when a random request came in from family housing. The physical copies of the maintenance request were smudged and crinkled like it had been stuffed in the back of a drawer for a while. He only had a day left before moving on to his next internship, but he flagged it as high priority. That was a month before the child was hurt. Another man worked in electrical, and he had an idea for upgrading the solar panels so that the grid could be upgraded for newer technology. When he proposed that to the head of electrical power, he was told he could propose it at the next meeting. That meeting keeps getting pushed back, and he has not been able to talk to anyone else since. So, Emmett decided that would be his platform. More open communication. It took Emmett 2 months to come to this conclusion. By then, Lyle and Thomas had been pushing hard, and just about everyone knew all about them. Lyle even made a comment about how Emmett was too young. Thomas jumped on that by pointing out Emmett's lack of campaigning, saying he wasn't taking this seriously enough. Emmett let them talk. He knew he had met much of the population between his time job shadowing and this survey, that the people would know that was not his true character. He was ready to show them what he was made of. The following 10 months were grueling. He had to lay out a realistic plan of how open communication would work. He wanted to try to revamp the form submission to electronic so that there was a way to track its progress. He wanted to implement town hall meetings so that citizens can learn what issues are being addressed, as well as bring concerns immediately. He also had to get his name out there as an active candidate. He had interviews with all the press highlighting his want to be more available than past captains. During the debates, Emmett was able to hold his own against Thomas and Lyle. He answered all questions confidently and did his best to bring conversations around to his platform whenever possible, especially when Lyle kept bringing up his age and inexperience. Emmett did have to smear the other two when his age came into question again for the 5th time in the 3rd debate. He stayed calm and asked if the two men were trying to change to a monarchy or a dictatorship. Yes, they had addressed his age, but he had been nominated without being asked to. He listened to the people before deciding on a platform. He had previously worked every job on the ship. It may be a short experience, but it was more than the others could claim outside their own jobs. Without listening to others, a good captain becomes one that will sink a ship fast. Emmett just wanted to hear the citizens before making decisions that would affect the rest of their lives. Election day was nerve-wracking, with little more than 3,000 people on board. Everyone 16 and older are allowed to vote. It would be easy for there to be a 3-way tie. Emmett had not been able to sleep the night before. The election committee had promised to take their time counting the votes to ensure an accurate count. Emmett was in one of the community rooms when the announcement came early the next morning. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had gotten just over 2/3 of the vote. After the inauguration, Emmett wasted no time setting up the first town hall meeting. It was held within the first week of being in office. He felt a sense of pride as he walked outside, and the world smelled like salt water. He was eager to start his career. Yeah, so not my best work. Something I wish to come back to eventually, maybe explain Emmett's life now that he's captain a little bit better, some of the things he is facing. But a story that I wanted to dip my toes into a little bit. I I don't like getting into politics very much. It's more of my husband's aspect and expertise, but I've been also trying not to go to him too much for advice on how to write things, because I want it to feel like my words, not somebody else's. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. Go ahead and hit the like button if you did. Subscribe so that you can come back next week for more stories. And we will be very shortly starting a new series as well. Check out the blog if you would like. And you can also check out my TikTok page for a little bit of behind the scenes of how I write and record my stories. I'll see you guys next week.